this is an experiment in two things. To see if the camera will recognize my face as a human face and focus on it, and it seems to. And two, to see if I'm able to make a reasonable video with such a bright background. I am making an attempt to do a video at the shooting range. I want to talk a little bit about different optics. I have a shotgun mic with me, which is what this is recorded with, and a lapel mic, which is what I'm going to use for the next video. And we will see how it goes. Anyhow, so in this case, what I want to talk a little bit about is not the rifle. The rifle, I think you guys have seen before. It's a build I've done a while back, and I've been exceptionally happy with it. It's an AR-15 Precision barrel, a stainless barrel, BCM key mod handguard, perfectly standard double star upper and lower receivers, but it does have a very nice Geissele trigger. And what is probably my favorite lightweight stock, the minimalist stock from MFT, Mission First Tactical. The grip is from them as well. What I do want to talk about is the optics arrangement for it. This is a rifle I'm considering giving somebody else. I've had it for a while. I've had a lot of fun with it, but I like to build new stuff. And I wanted to set up sort of a general purpose and not hugely expensive optics setup. And interesting. All right, we'll see if the exposure is really moving around. And what's happening is I needed something that's, I'm fortunate I shoot with some very nice stuff, but what I was looking for was a moderately priced low power variable scope and a moderately priced offset red dot to make kind of a general purpose setup that is where you can switch between different sights without having to remove anything, adjust anything, flip anything up or down. One of the downsides, for example, with conventional flip-up iron sights is that to deploy them, you have to flip up the rear sight, flip up the front sight. If you have a magnified optic, you need to remove that. There's a lot of things happening. With the offset red dot setup or a piggyback setup, which I also like for different reasons, the only thing you have to do is turn the gun. So I think that's quicker, and I think for a general purpose setup, I think it's a pretty good way to go. All right. So what is this setup? First of all, note that the mount that I'm using here is an AeroPrecision single-piece mount, and I'm sort of on a record. I'm not liking that mount very much, and I stand by that. Every single one of these things that I've looked at has been out of round in some way, shape, or form, and that is really by design. So the way this mount works, it is super light, but the ring halves, there's kind of a hook here up top, and there are two screws in the bottom. And the way this thing works is that as you tighten the screws, the ring half bends a little bit and flexes. So that all it does is really, it clamps the scope very securely. It's not going anywhere, but it's really squeezing us from the sides. So you end up with this sort of an oval cross-section clamp, and a lot of scopes don't work well with that. You generally should not use this mount on anything where you're planning to dial the turrets a lot. And even on some scopes that you don't dial, does not work great. This particular scope, thankfully, seems to tolerate this mount without any issues. So it can stay in it, and this is kind of a set and forget type setup. It works, it should work fine. All right, the wind is picking up, so let's see how much wind noise we have. I do have this wind blocker on the microphone, but it is an experiment. Anyhow, this scope is from the Polish company called Delta. I've been talking about their products on and off for a bit. They're not very big in the US. They are becoming more prominent here. They have some interesting products. Most of their products that I've talked about were from their top-end scope product line called the Striker. This one is a new line that is not as expensive, and this scope is called the Hornet. I think they're planning to use the name Hornet for a variety of different AR-15 intended optics, and this one is no exception. It is a second focal plane 1:6 by 24 rifle scope. It is made in the Philippines. If I were to make a guess, I would guess that it is likely to be a design similar to Burris RT6. I mean, it's newer, so maybe there are some improvements. It's looking pretty good so far. And the it's a second focal plane edged reticle, milliradian adjustments on this one, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, the turrets are covered, but they are finger adjustable, and it's 0.1 milliradian clicks. I was just shooting with this gun, getting everything sighted in, and checking the adjustments. They seem to be fairly secure. This is not a scope that I would generally use if I need to dial. It tracks and so the feel is a little mushy, but doesn't really matter. This is a scope that is designed to hold. The reticle itself, and you will see an inside image of it right now. It should be somewhere. You'll see it. That gets edited post-processing. The reticle, in the interest of full disclaimer, so I helped Delta design this thing. They wanted a general purpose reticle for a 556 caliber or 223 that would provide some basic bullet drop compensating holds and some additional wind holds. So what you see is a horseshoe and designed for 50 to 100 yard sighting, and then there is the 300, 400, 500, and 600 holes with also 50 medium holes in between. The tree looks a little bit weird. We've put these bars on the sides, and the bars correspond to essentially 5 mile per hour and 10 mile per hour wind. Right? If you see a bar, the left part is 5 mile per hour wind, the left edge, and the right edge is 10 mile per hour wind. On the horizontal, near the horseshoe, to the left and right of it, you see a couple of horizontal lines with full milliradian hash marks, and the way this is set up, at when you're on 6 power, the whole thing is calibrated on 6 power. You have some reasonable lead holes outside of the horseshoe. The scope is illuminated. It is not a nuclear bright illumination. Illumination is perfectly reasonable for an edge scope, but brightness-wise, it seems to be about the same as Burris RT6 was. And the only portion of the, for example, I can, it's a bright sunny day in New Mexico, I can easily see the illumination, but it's day visible, but it's not day bright, if that makes sense. The only portions of the reticle that I illuminated, now you'll see a picture momentarily, is the horseshoe and the center dot. Okay. The reason for that is that when you are trying to go fast, especially on 1 power, and the light gets low, what you want to see is really the center of the reticle. So we're trying to create basically a symmetric, sort of a symmetric aiming point in a low light. The reticle is nice and bold. You don't really need illumination for it to work well. And that's that. So you'll see a couple of images as we go along, and I've been doing a fair amount of shooting with it at different distances. It seems to be a fairly decent general purpose reticle. It is calibrated somewhere between 55 and 62 grain 556 loads, so it should be fairly close to most commonly available 556 rounds. If you're using something heavy bullet, it's not going to be ideal, but with some reasonably clever sighting, you can minimize the offsets. All BDC reticles are perfect at only one set of conditions and one set of velocities and all that. There's no way to make a BDC reticle perfect for everyone. This one is kind of a compromise design. It should be close enough for every 55 to 62 grain load, and within reason close enough to most other bullet weights and to most other similar calibers. Okay. Anyhow, I've spent a fair amount of time with the scope. I like it. I think for the money it's quite good. It should be running in the $400 range, maybe a little bit under. I don't know for sure yet. I don't sell scopes, so kind of know the price. I don't know what the street price is because the scope is quite new. For the offset red dot, what I'm using here is a Hawke Micro red dot sight. I've mentioned them in the past couple of times. I have 2 of these red dot sights. At some point I was looking for something that wasn't terribly expensive, that would be reasonably durable, so I got 2 of these from Hawke. One with a 5 MOA dot, another one with a 3 MOA dot. This particular one is 3 MOA. I've been using them for over a year now on handguns and on rifles. Haven't tried them on shotguns. They've been moving around back and forth. I think this one is finally gonna stay here. I have had zero problems with it. This one is manually adjustable. There are 2 buttons here. It looks a little bit like I think there is some Chinese factory that's making these, and a bunch of people use them as an OEM. I don't know if they all hold up. These 2 definitely hold up quite nicely. Collimation quality is reasonable. There is some parallax at 50 yards, but it's not too much. You know, I shoot offhand at a place like this, and at 50 yards it stays within that, well within that. I did not bother measuring the parallax very precisely. To me, it looks in the same basic range parallax-wise as the Burst Fastfire 3, which it always does fairly well. The mounting pattern for it is the same basic pattern, I think, as the Fastfire, which uses the same screws and locating pins as a Doctor sight. I have several sights set up that way, and they all seem to work fine. It's a comparatively ubiquitous mounting pattern, although no longer the most popular. The most popular are probably the Trijicon RMR and the Shield RMS. But there are plenty of sites still that use a Doctor pattern, and this is one of them. For an offset mount, I'm using the little Daniel Defense mount. It seems to set it up at about the right angle. Okay. So that's basically that. I'm always looking for some sort of an expensive and decent low power variable. Burris RT6 was sort of my go-to for a while. It looks like Burris discontinuing it. There should be a replacement. I haven't seen it yet. I like this guy. In a similar general price range, maybe a little bit more, there's a Swamp Fox Arrowhead. And I've looked at them side by side. In terms of overall optical quality, they seem to be broadly comparable. The 1 to 10 Arrowhead I had was, I think, just a little bit better, but also a little bit more expensive, so kind of pick your poison. In terms of durability, I've seen 2 of these scopes with different reticles. I'll talk about the other reticle separately, and I've been beating them up for a little bit now, and both seem to be working well, so I don't really have any major complaints. With that, I'll wrap this up. I'll need to see how the sound worked out in this wind, and I need to figure out how to lock exposure. I think the exposure of the video has been moving up and down. Thank you for watching. Thank you for chiming in. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.